Very warm welcome and good afternoon from my side. My name is Nina. I'm from the Environment Agency Austria and I'm representing the EU4Green project today. Um, yeah, so I'm going to start quickly with an introduction just to the project and with some housekeeping rules. And then I'm already going to hand over to my colleague, Sabine, who is going to introduce EU funding programs to you. Please, the next slide, Sabine. Thank you. All right, so housekeeping. As already mentioned, please switch off your cameras and microphones for the whole webinar. So we can have an undisrupted webinar. Please feel free to ask questions using the chat box tools. Use this opportunity with our guest speakers from the Western Balkan Investment Framework and the European Investment Bank to ask any questions you have. In case of an interruption, use the same link to reconnect, please. As already mentioned, note that the webinar will be recorded. Both the recording and the presentation will be available at the EU4Green website a few days after the webinar. You will also be informed via email if you registered to the webinar, and the copyrights to the webinar belong to the Environment Agency Austria. Let me guide you quickly through the agenda. So I'm going to do a short introduction to the project, and my colleague Sabine is going to introduce EU financing available for the Western Balkan 6, so EU funding programs and the Western Balkan Investment Framework. Afterwards, this is going to be followed by a very quick interactive Q&A with our BCAS tool. Then I'm going to hand over to Anja Nagel from DG Nest. She's going to talk about the Western Balkan Investment Framework private sector financing programs in the Western Balkans. And then we have two experts from the European Investment Bank who are going to introduce to us the new Innovation and Green Transformation Facility, a financial instrument blending new grants with European Investment Bank financing and technical assistance. And then we're going to hear from Sabine again, who is going to have some closing remarks for us, as well as some sources and useful links that you can look up afterwards as well if you have any more questions. So we have a few learning objectives for this webinar, and the key aim is to raise awareness on the Western Balkan Investment Framework activities and possibilities of financing for the private sector in the Western Balkans. You will gain insights from the European Investment Bank on the programs for financing of SMEs, and we aim to enable you to attract more financing for environmental projects. You will also receive a list of resources to help you in your research for financing for accelerating the green agenda in the Western Balkans. So what is the EU4Green project? In a nutshell, the project is run from 2020 to 2025. We're in the process of extending the project at the moment. It is funded by the EU and the Austrian Development Agency, and it is implemented by the Environment Agency Austria. It covers the 6 Western Balkan economies, and it aims to support them in the implementation of the green agenda. Please turn off your microphone. All right. Okay. Then the Environment Agency Austria is one of the leading European environmental consultants, and it is the most important environmental expert organization in Austria. Our agency has just celebrated 40 years of experience and employs more than 600 experts in more than 55 scientific disciplines, working on projects in more than 20 languages in more than 60 countries, led by 2 female managing directors, quotes of whom you can see on the right side. Our agency generated over 50 million turnover in a year. All right, thank you. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Sabine, who is going to talk about EU financing for the Western Balkans in an introductory way. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina, for this introduction. I hope you can hear me all right. Perfect. Thank you. Yes, also a very warm welcome from my side. I'm very happy to be able to present you a brief overview of EU financing options available for the Western Balkans with a focus on EU funding programs on the one side and the Western Balkan Investment Framework on the other. As Nina kindly already introduced myself, my name is Sabine Fritz and I also work in the Green Finance team of the Environment Agency Austria. And with that, I would like to start right off with the content of the presentation. And I would like to begin by establishing a common understanding of the terms funding and financing. When a project or activity is funded, there is no expectation of repayment, and we will talk more about EU funding programs in this very webinar. And on the other hand, we have the financing instrument, and when a project or activity is being financed, this money is expected to be repaid in time and with remuneration, typically in meaning interest payments. And in addition to these two layers, there's two more. Financing can also differentiate in terms of its sources. So where does the money come from? It can be provided by public sources, including national or regional budgets, fiscal initiatives, and also EU sources, which we are discussing today. So this is the public form of funding, of sourcing funds. But it can also be provided by private sources, and this can include financing from commercial banks or private actors. And in terms of financing environmental projects, all of these layers can actually be combined. So a project can be financed through a combination of funding or financing instruments, which can be provided by public and private sources. And such a package is called blended finance. And in this illustration explains this concept of blended finance in a bit more detail. So it shows the option of how private capital, private finance on the one side, can be combined with different public funding options on the other. So it can be combined with grant funds or concessional funds from international financial institutions like the European Investment Bank, from whom we will hear more later in the webinar. But from the perspective of sourcing financial means, it can also stem from a combination of different parties like bilateral, multilateral donors, UN agencies, or lending by national governments. And this package then on top can also be covered with a de-risking instrument, like for instance, guarantees. So in a nutshell, blended finance should be considered a structuring approach on how to finance a project rather than an investment or finance instrument in itself. And in the end, it allows different organizations with different objectives to finance alongside together while achieving still the very own goals. And this could be plain and simple financial returns, but it can also be generating social impact or even both. And yeah, speaking of funding parties, in fact, the EU is the largest donor to the Western Balkan regions, specifically when it comes to driving the green transition. And how does it work? How does the EU support the region? It does so through EU funding programs, which you can see on the left side of the slide, but also through Western Balkans Investment Framework on the right. And through these two pillars, the EU aims to support the Western Balkan economies in their EU accession processes. In total, the EU has provided access to 17 EU funding programs for the Western Balkans, two of which we will be discussing today as they're most relevant for our topic of financing environmental projects in the private sector. And these two programs are LIFE and Horizon Europe. And the information on the programs can be found, of course, on the program websites themselves, but usually they're also on the official websites of the respective ministries of European integration in your regions. And regarding the objective of the WBIF, I will not go into more detail myself at this point, as Anja Nagel from DG Envest will do so in the following presentation. But for now, we will focus just a bit on the two EU funding programs available to your economies and relevant for the private sector. And the first one is Horizon Europe, which is in its essence a research and innovation program. And it defined for itself key strategic aims for its first 4 implementing years, including the following that are also relevant for us in today's webinar, which are promoting the green transition, restoring Europe's ecosystems and biodiversity, including the sustainable management of natural resources, but also making Europe the first circular, climate neutral and sustainable economy. And of course, Horizon Europe has plenty more objectives than that. And because they're more elaborative, they're structured into 3 pillars to organize them, different objectives of the program. And the third pillar is the most relevant for us at this point. And you can see on the slide that the development and scaling up of startups and SMEs is included in the descriptions. And we've included the relevant links, which you can check out for more technical assistance and more information after the webinar, as the slides will be shared with you. And no, the next slide. Yes, now we can see the second program, focusing on environment and climate action, and in short is called LIFE. And complementary to the Horizon Europe program, the general objective of the LIFE program is to contribute to the shift towards a sustainable EU economy in order to improve the quality of the environment. The LIFE program funds environment projects in the form of grants, prizes, and procurement. And also in this case, we have put the most relevant links for you on the slide. The website of LIFE, there you can find, for instance, different webinar recordings on presentations informing you about how to apply for the funding. And there's also an online manual available guiding you through the application process. And we have also taken the liberty to just briefly summarize the individual steps for approaching EU funding programs in general. And what you can see here in blue writing is a snapshot of the Commission's website called Funding and Tenders, and explains how to find funding, how to apply, and what are the expectations of the EU on managing the finance project. And I will not go through each of the steps depicted on the slide right now, but we encourage you to check the guidance developed by the Commission on how to apply. And in addition to that, it could also be of great help, assistance, if you contact your national focal points in your economies for learning more on the EU programs. And also, I really just want to emphasize that the EU has a great interest in increasing the utilization of the funding programs. And this is also a reason why there is such an elaborative support in the form of guidance, webinars, presentation, manuals, etc. And going forward, the Commission also aims to simplify the procedures to attract even more SMEs under their applicants of EU funding programs. And the Commission plans to do so under the next multi-annual financial framework. And this is what my last slide is about from my side, and it summarizes the key features of the next EU multi-annual financial framework, in short MFF, covering the duration from 2028 to 2034. So it's always a 7-year period. And from what we have learned in recent years on multiple ends, unfortunately, is the necessity of being able to react to unforeseen circumstances swiftly. So budget flexibility is key. At the same time, including budgets better tailored to local needs is also an objective. And important, as just mentioned, for our purpose now is that some critical feedback regarding the complexity of accessing EU funds was taken into account, and thus the new MFF, in the new MFF, we can expect simpler procedures. And yeah, lastly, competitiveness is also already a main objective of the current Commission and will be carried over into the next budget cycle of the EU. Yeah, and this is it in a nutshell from my side. And we have also prepared a short survey, and we invite you to participate in it. And I will show you the QR code. It's right here. Yeah, and we warmly invite you to take out your cell phones and scan the QR code and yeah, perhaps take part in our short survey. And for this, I will hand over to Nina.
Yes, thank you very much, Sabine. Please, as already mentioned by Sabine, use your cell phone, scan the QR code, and then I'm gonna switch to the questions that we have prepared for you. Don't worry, they're very simple. And yeah, I see that some people already answering. Yeah, our first question is, what is the difference between funding and financing? We have multiple choices, so there is more than one correct answer. Our options are funding has no expectations of repayment. Then we have financing is with the expectation of repayment. Funding is tied to specific conditions and requirements. And financing repayments do not include a repayment schedule. We're gonna give you a few seconds now to take your time to read through the answers again and then to answer. Yes, we have a few more answers coming in and see that already quite a lot of people participated. Thank you very much. All right, our front runner is funding has no expectation of repayment. Number 2 is financing is with the expectation of repayment. And the answer that seems not to be correct, according to the participants, is financing repayments do not include a repayment schedule. Okay, I'm gonna give it a few more seconds and then I'm gonna finish this question. Okay. We have no more answers coming in. All right, so the correct answer would be funding has no expectation of repayment. Yes, thank you, that was correct. Then financing is with the expectation of repayment. That's also a correct answer. And funding is tied to specific conditions and requirements would also be a correct answer. The only one that's not correct is financing repayments do not include a repayment schedule. Thank you for participating. We have one more question. The question is, how do you approach the application process to a new funding program? We have multiple choice again, so please be advised that you can answer with more than one. We have ask your wife, husband for tips. Then we have the option of contact the Western Balkan Investment Framework. Then we have get in touch with international financial institutions. We have check out your local library. And last but not least, we have search for EU funding program guidelines online. Okay, we already have quite a few answers coming in. Thank you. Okay, we definitely have a few front runners here. Let's give it a few more seconds and then we're gonna check out the correct answers. All right. If anyone else wants to participate, please be advised that there is also the session code all the way on the top of the slide. It's 647854. if you still want to answer. All right, but otherwise we're going to finish this question as well. As most of you answered correctly, the correct answers are contact the Western Balkan Investment Framework, get in touch with international financial institutions, and of course, search for EU funding program guidelines online. Yeah, great. Thank you very much for participating. And then I'm already gonna hand over again for more content. We're gonna hand over to Anja Nagel from DJNS and from the Western Balkan Investment Framework and from the European Commission. Okay, I can already see her.
Thank you very much, Nina. Now you should be able to hear me as well. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me for this webinar. I will talk a bit more about the Western Balkan Investment Framework, maybe starting to present myself. I'm Anja Nagel, and I'm working for DG Invest in the team working on the Western Balkan Investment Framework, and I'm in charge of the private sector support under this framework. Next slide, please. So I will start with the bigger picture again. Why do we talk about private sector and the green transition? There are several reasons for this. First of all, green practices are important to protect climate, environment, and health. And green practices of businesses also feed into the overarching objectives of the green agenda for the Western Balkans and the EU Green Deal, i.e. you cannot reach the objectives without having the private sector on board or private companies on board as well. Then some private companies are actually drivers of the green transition through innovation. Innovation to facilitate green transition offers business opportunities for businesses. So this is another reason why we talk about private sector and the green transition in one sentence. The private sector, beyond this factor of innovation, the private sector is a partner for the green transition in other contexts as well. For example, the private sector itself can provide financial resources and or know-how as well. For example, for technologies, there we have the link again to the innovation, but also for management. For example, management of facilities related to the production of renewable or storage of renewable energy. Then the green transition of the private sector is also part of the accession process. There are many norms and standards at EU level that become more and more applicable as well for the Western Balkan region as the region slowly integrates or in some aspects even rapidly integrates into the single markets of the EU. So it's important that the norms and standards are also used by Western Balkan businesses. And this also includes reporting obligations for banks, commercial banks, and also for companies. So with this relatively complex picture, it is important that the private sector is part of this process and that we engage with the private sector to facilitate its role in this process. And now I would like to zoom with the next slide into DG Invest's more general engagement with the private sector, which actually goes beyond funding. We are organizing on a regular basis and actually had 3 throughout 2025 investment conferences and business fora. And the idea behind these is to mobilize investors and financing and to facilitate matchmaking so that businesses can team up or businesses and banks can team up to drive forward the green transition. And these events usually provide as well an opportunity for the European Commission to listen to businesses, listen to ideas, to grievances, and to see as well how cooperation in this context can be improved further. Or of course to hear as well that everything is perfect and no improvement is needed, but so far that hasn't happened yet. Then another leg of our private sector engagement are so-called calls for expression of interest, not to be mistaken with calls related to funding instruments or projects. This is really a bit a call to harvest ideas, to mobilize the private sectors, to somehow organize the communication between the European Commission and the private sector in a transparent way. And there, so far, it's a relatively new way of working. So far, we've had one of these calls for expression of interest for the Western Balkans. It ran from April to May 2025. And the evaluation of the very numerous applications with business ideas received is still in the process of being finalized. And then third, we have different support tools, financial support tools, which include blended finance, which was already presented in the previous presentation, and guarantee mechanisms. We have technical support, technical assistance, or also studies that we fund and analysis. And through policy dialogue, for example, related to the reform agendas for the Western Balkan beneficiaries, or that not for, but by the Western Balkan beneficiaries, and other interactions, we support and we provide policy guidance and support the implementation of reforms. And actually, I would say that EU4Green, the project, falls under this third category. But of course, reforms are also important for businesses. Next slide, please. Important in the context of the WBIF, the Western Balkan Investment Framework, is to know that we do not provide direct funding to private entities, to private companies. Usually how it works is that the European Commission defines priorities. We actually do not approve programs. That's a separate governance structure. And we provide funding, and also, to come back to the definitions that we heard in the previous presentation, we also provide financing, because some of our financial support that we provide to private sector companies under the WBIF have to be repaid. Then this funding is basically, or the general priorities for which the funding is supposed to be used are then published through calls of proposals, where we really do expect proposals by so-called international financial institutions. The international financial institutions, they design programs. They usually bring in their own funding as well, which is then blended with the EU funding, and mobilize a third financier, and then channel the EU funding further through partner financial institutions. These are usually commercial financial institutions and local financial institutions, i.e. commercial financial institutions that work in the different Western Balkan beneficiaries. That in turn provides a financing to micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. And also this is possible to mid-caps and larger companies. It's not the main focus of our programs, but it is possible. And we will see later as well that we also have a couple of programs that actually include explicitly mid-caps as well. The priorities that are currently covered or targeted by WBIF private sector support include the green transition, related to this, sustainable agriculture, digital transition and innovation, crowding in of private capital in general, financial inclusion of vulnerable groups that do not have easy access to financing, trade and value chain integration, which is of course a very important point in the context of EU accession, and so on. One more thing that I would actually like to say here at this stage already is that the approval process actually, so the European Commission launches a call for proposals where it explains the priorities for which the funding should be used. And then international financial institutions submit proposals answering to this call. These proposals are then analyzed and screened in various steps. And then there is a governance structure related to the WBIF that does not only include the European Commission, but other partners as well that we will see at a later slide. And this governance structure approves the projects that will in the end receive funding and or financing under the WBIF. Next slide, please. Yeah, here I'm mirroring again something that Sabine said earlier as well, but I'm trying to put our WBIF different instruments into context as well. So different instruments are of advantage for different types of companies in various stages of development and profitability, and also different products and markets. So we have, on the one hand, we have companies that are not really established, that do not really have any revenue yet, and or products for which there's not really an established market. And then this sort of goes to the other end, where we have established companies with activities that have commercial returns or close to commercial returns, and we have functioning markets for the products and services that they offer. So when we think back to the slide where I talked about the three different types of support tools that we have the policy dialogue that is closely linked to reforms supported by national budget, which of course can also take place without EU support. That basically is useful for all types of companies and markets. And the same goes for technical assistance that is funded, among others, under the WBIF. Technical assistance that helps to build capacity on the company side, but also sometimes on the side of financial institutions to help them better understand certain markets, certain types of companies, and to evaluate credit or loan requests more easily, and then also be more easily willing to grant loans. And in between, we have the different financial tools that we offer under the WBIF. We have investment grants, i.e. that's really funding, that's non-repayable forms of finance that targets more the companies or also the product services for which there's not yet a functioning market, or companies that still have very low returns because they are at an early stage or are entering into an innovative field. Then we have sort of medium instruments that could be funding through debt or equity funds that are supported by EU contributions that de-risk the investments of other investors and thus make funding available. And also paid guarantees, i.e. where EU funds are used, are paid into a specific account that then is used as a guarantee for loans by our international financial institution partners or their local financial institutions. Or we have the so-called EFSD Plus guarantee programs that are closer to market returns and for which we actually do not pay out any money, but we keep a provisioning in case that any calls for guarantee coverage are necessary. The instruments more to the left, the investment grants and then the paid guarantees and the structured funds, they are less costly for our international financial institution partners, and thus also less costly or more beneficial for the final beneficiaries, i.e. the companies, than the EFSD Plus guarantees that are closer to the markets. And thanks to the EU support, the conditions of the final beneficiaries can be improved through various doors. For example, lower interest rates can be possible, and or lower collateral, and or lower maturities, and or funding that otherwise wouldn't be available at all. Next slide, please. As we've seen part of this slide already before. So on the left, we have all the different partners under the Western Balkan Investment Framework. It is not just the European Commission, it is also the EU member states, the partner financial institutions. These are the ones that before I called the international financial institutions. We see various of them here on the slide. For example, EIB, who will also speak later on in today's sessions. Then we have bilateral donors that are also part of the Western Balkan Investment Framework that actually contribute financially. But I have to say, so far their funding is only used for public infrastructure investments supported under the framework, not yet for private sector supports. And we have observers to the Western Balkan Investment Framework, for example, or notably the European Parliament, the energy community, the transport community, and so on. And important is not the observers, but notably the Commission, member states, and donors. They actually approve the projects that will receive funding or financing under the Western Balkan Investment Framework. We also have some statistics. Actually, the statistics concern private sector support operations that have been put in place since 2006. Something else that maybe I should mention here is that over 50% of all our ongoing private sector support programs under the WBIF support actually companies in the green transition. I think this is quite an important number. It's actually, to be precise, 51.7%. So this is something that is important to mention. And then beyond the EU programs that were mentioned by Sabine already, plus the WBIF support to the private sector, we also have support that is funded in context of the reform agendas and the linked reform and growth facility, because there are also reforms, I mean, as I mentioned in the slide before, that facilitate private sector operations, and the meeting of reform steps linked to creating a favorable business climate are also rewarded by payments under the reform and growth facility. Next slide, please. Almost at the end, I mean, we have quite a few programs under the WBIF ongoing. I've only selected a few that have a focus on the green transition. We have one by EIB. I'm not going to go into all the details here. But maybe worthwhile mentioning is that these programs target different aspects of the green transition. We have innovation and research with EIB's program. We have agribusiness, climate finance, and green technologies with EBRD's program. We have green finance or climate resilience and energy efficiency with CDP's program. And we have, again, energy efficiency with the Green for Growth Fund that KfW manages together with the fund manager, Finance in Motion, because this is one of the structured funds that I have mentioned before as well. And of course, we also have under the EFSD Plus guarantees that specifically target green transition. For example, a KfW's Green Transformation Facility. The way EU support is used in context of these programs varies. I mean, obviously, under the EFSD Plus guarantee programs, the EU support is a guarantee that is not paid but kept as a provisioning in case it is needed sometime in the future. Then we have EU contribution that is used as an equity stake in a fund that in turn provides financing through SMEs, either directly or through financial intermediaries. And it is thanks to the WBIF equity stake that other investments by other investors bear less risks, so becomes more attractive. And then we also have EU programs such as the first two mentioned on the slide, where the EU support is used as a technical assistance, and also as incentive payments to companies that undertake specific investments to lower than their overall investment costs. It's a bit like, yeah, I don't know, the housing renovation premium that is paid to house owners in Belgium, that if you renovate your house to make it more energy efficient and you take out a loan for this, once you can prove that you've actually undertaken the renovation, you get cash payments from your local community, which then lowers your overall expenses. So it's a bit like that. And now I'm coming to the last slide with some further information. We have a very useful website with lots of information on the WBIF, on the private sector part, where we actually have a booklet where all ongoing programs are presented. But there's also a search function where all commercial partners or banking partners per beneficiary can be found, and also the program that they are working on. And I think this is actually quite useful for private companies that want to access funding that is benefiting from WBIF support, i.e. Offer some favorable conditions for private companies. Because in order to benefit this, it's very important to talk to the local banks, as we directly do not fund private companies. Maybe a last word, there's of course also an important public sector support under the WBIF, notably directed to facilitate investments in public sector infrastructure, but which is also, I mean, on the one hand, it also makes an important contribution to the region's green transition, for example, through renewable energy resources, or funding infrastructure for renewable energy, and also sustainable infrastructure such as railway. This public infrastructure is also important to support the business sector, because without infrastructure, business is going to be very difficult. And then last but not least, for public sector infrastructure investments, there are usually also tenders ongoing, which in turn offer business opportunities to private sector. And the website also offers information on ongoing tenders. And now closing the ring with the green investments or the green transition, overall, public and private sector combined, for the period 21-25, 2.1 billion euros support the green transition in the Western Balkans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very insightful presentation. We would have a few questions in the chat. If you're okay, then I'm gonna post them to you. There was one question: have you conducted studies for specific countries with regards to the needs for the private sector on access to finance? If yes, are they available to the public? I think you are muted, Anja.
I'm sorry.
Yes, thank
Classic. No, actually, we don't. We haven't conducted specific studies for specific beneficiaries. There's always, sometimes in context of projects, then we also try to get information from the investment conferences, but we have not yet conducted specific studies. there may be something happening in this context, notably in light of support under the next MFF.
Great, thank you. Then we have one more. When is the deadline for evaluation of the call of the expression of interest? And what will be the next steps for ones that will pass the evaluation? So it's two questions actually.
Okay. For the deadline, I mean, there wasn't a fixed deadline. There was a fixed deadline for the submission of ideas, of applications under the call, but there wasn't a fixed deadline for the evaluation, because it is also the first time that DG Invest is doing this for the Western Balkans. There were different steps involved in this evaluation process. Sometimes we have been and we are still going back to companies that submitted ideas under the call for expression of interest to understand a bit better what the proposal was all about. So this is still ongoing, but I'd say that in the next weeks, all applicants that have submitted proposals under the call will have received feedback, and the feedback can vary. Yeah, it depends a bit on the proposal and what was actually needed, because this proposal was not exclusively directed, or how can I say this? The main idea of this proposal was not to collect ideas for funding, but it was aimed to collect ideas of what can we all do together in the Western Balkans, private sector together with the EU, with the Western Balkan beneficiaries, full stop. And then the idea was to evaluate what makes sense, what is clear, what is needed, and then how can we team up. And in some instances, teaming up in context of policy dialogue may be required, because the people who submitted, or the entities who submitted a proposal, do have a significant funding available, but face other hurdles. In other instances, it could be useful to mobilize some funding, and then we have to see how this can be done. It could be under WBIF, but it could be through other channels as well, because as was presented earlier, there are other programs available. So the idea is in the coming weeks to somehow get back to all applicants and give some sort of feedback how the working together can be pursued in the future through different types of tools or dialogue instruments. So I think I answered the second part of the question as well.
Great, thank you. Then we have two more. Is there not a call for expression of interest planned at the moment?
No, there will be, or will certainly be, more in the future, but at the moment, no new call is planned, because we still have to digest all the proposals. We've received more than 400 proposals under the first one, so we still have to digest and go forward with what we have received.
Great.
And then, I can, yeah.
Then we have one question about the LIFE program. Is the LIFE program relevant for all Western Balkan countries, or are some not part of the program?
This I would actually like to give back to Sabine, this question. I'm less familiar with the LIFE program.
Maybe Sabine can also answer it in the chat then. All right, okay, thank you so much. If already our next experts are here as well, because we're a little bit ahead of time. Thank you very much, Anja. Thank you for taking the time to answer the questions as well. If you have any more questions, please do not hesitate to post them in the chat. Maybe Anja's gonna be here a few more minutes, and she can answer them for you. All right. Do we have Tolga and Florentin already here? If they're okay with being a little bit early, I would like to hand over. Next slide, please. Yes, okay. You're gonna share your own presentation. All right.
Yes.
Great.
Just a moment.
All right. Okay. Thank
You
you so
can
much.
see?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can see it.
Thank you so much, Nina. Thank you very much. My name is Tolga Tuncer, and I work at the Western Balkans and Turkey division of the European Investment Bank. Together with my colleague, Florentin Gusmini, who is also online and with us today. We are covering the private sector operations with financial institutions across the region. Before starting, we would like to thank you again. We are very grateful for this invitation, and it's a great pleasure to attend this very timely event and have the opportunity to present our green offering. Just maybe a quick remark. Although initially our proposal was just to present the Innovation and Green Transformation Facility, which we will. We thought maybe it will be useful to have a broader presentation of our green offering in general. So other programs like advisory and supportive tools for financial institutions in the region. So just a few words, maybe on the EIB Global. So just yeah, as a lending arm of the European Union, of course, supporting private sector development is crucial for the EIB, and the EIB is fully committed supporting Western Balkans on their path to EU accession. This includes, of course, advancing the green transition, which is fully aligned with the economic and investment plan of the European Union for Western Balkans. And these are the essential elements of this commitment of the EIB. As you might know, EIB Global is the branch of the EIB responsible for operations outside the EU. And EIB is very active throughout the region in both public and private sectors, providing financing through intermediate lending as well as direct loans to corporates and project finance. We have a regional on top of EIB headquarters where we are located in Luxembourg. We have EIB regional representation for Western Balkans in Belgrade, and also representative offices in Sarajevo, Tirana, and Skopje. And it doesn't appear in this slide, but we just recently this month opened a new representation in Podgorica in Montenegro. So we are quite active on the field in the region. So maybe just a few words on our partnership with the local banks to support the private sector development. So since 2012, over 40% of the EIB Global's financing in Western Balkans has been dedicated to private sector support through local financial institutions. Partnership with local banks for us is essential and instrumental for a number of reasons. First, the channeling of the funds is more efficiently and more affordable through the local banks. Of course, we cannot know the local markets like the local banks. And it also lowers the entry barriers. We can circumvent entry barriers, and it also contributes to enhancing productivity and fostering economic inclusion in the countries and in the local markets. Most of the financing, I have to say, our financing through local banks go target SMEs and mid caps, and the reason is of course, simple. Mid-caps and SMEs and mid-caps are the backbones of the economies in Western Balkans, like in many other countries, and they encounter the greatest challenges in their access to financing with adequate conditions. So that's why our focus is on SME and mid-cap financing. Today I would like to provide you a brief overview of EIB's green offering, which includes supports to our support to banks' green lending, and in a second, and subsequently our advisory offer, so advisory activities plus online tools that we provide to our clients. So, just an overview of, I will start by introducing EIB's activities regarding green financing. Here I can start with our, let's say, plain vanilla product, the intermediated lending product, which we call as MBIL, multi-beneficiary intermediate lending. This is a structure perhaps most of you are familiar with. So we provide EIB loan to a partner financial intermediary in one of the Western Balkan countries, which on lends those funds to the eligible final beneficiaries under the eligible sub-financings, let's say sub-projects. And here we have what we call as the green window, where the financial intermediary commits to a certain amount of green financing in the operation. These can be any eligible sector on the EIB Green eligibility list, and predominantly, and nowadays, renewable energies, energy efficiency, and sustainable transportation projects. Then the sub-projects, let's say, if the financial intermediary committed 40% of a green window, then the 40% of the EIB lending should normally be channeled to the green projects. And most of the time, we couple these projects with technical assistance to the financial intermediaries to help them implement the projects and to assess EIB eligibilities, and also to help them on their reporting. And no need to say that the EIB's green eligibilities are in line with the EU taxonomy requirements. Another area is maybe not exactly green, but we thought it might be useful to mention it. We have impact finance lines, again, targeting SMEs and mid-caps. So here, and we are now entering into the blended financing area, and Anja already mentioned. So blended financing is an essential part of EIB's activities in the region. What we mean already been mentioned. So we blend, so we couple EIB financing with the funds, with the grant component financed by the Commission under WBIF structure mostly. And we provide the grant also to the final financial intermediaries, and accordingly to the final beneficiaries of the lending. So in impact finance, this is the case. So EIB financing is coupled with the ERI grant. And here the key is the final beneficiaries of the facility commit to certain KPIs social impact KPIs, key performance indicators, to be eligible for the grant component. And those KPIs are related to the social impact. So we have 3 areas of social impact: gender equality, youth employment, and social inclusion. So once they achieve their targets, they are eligible for the grant component on top of the EIB financing, and they receive the grants accordingly. So it is, I think, very useful incentive mechanism to enhance social inclusion in the region, and this facility has already been deployed recently. And another facility is already again mentioned by Anja, Innovation and Green Transformation Facility. Again, this is a blended facility, blending EIB financing with the investment grants under the WBIF. Here again, we will be providing the funds to financial intermediaries who will on lend to the final beneficiaries, which are SMEs and mid-caps. And we, in this facility, we will be able to provide 10% of grant incentive payment in the form of a cashback to the final beneficiaries. So direct cash payment to the final beneficiaries. And another pillar, so on top of the EIB financing, which is the pillar 1, and the grant component, which is pillar 2 in this facility, we will have abundant technical assistance. So technical assistance, which will help the financial intermediaries to implement this this facility, and also technical assistance to the final beneficiaries to help them assess the projects, to come with bankable projects to be eligible for the facility. And so this is also an important component of the facility. And here the focus of this facility is both innovation and green. So we will also expect a significant green green investment contribution under this facility. When we look at the green eligibilities for the IGTF, so Innovation and Green Transformation Facility, so we have a bit different than the general eligibilities, EIB eligibility. So it's a bit more structured, in line with the Commission's policy directives and assessments. And as you can see, the focus is more on the agribusiness, so sustainable agriculture activities, biodiversity. So any improvement in the direction of sustainable agriculture improvements, livestock, climate resilience investments, sustainable crop and animal aquaculture production are all included for this facility. So it is still quite broad, I would say. And on top of that, we also have eligibilities regarding the pollution prevention, and as well as water and wastewater treatment. So this facility, we have our like a general approval, and we are already in close contact with a number of financial intermediaries in the region, and we target to start deploying the facility early next year with a number of financial institutions in the region. So this was more like the direct, like the funded lending facilities. So also a few words on the guarantee products, which also significantly contribute to the green objectives. So we have in the region available EIF portfolio guarantees, which are granular guarantees to the financial institutions. So the most recent one was the guarantee for SMEs resilience program. So it was a non-thematic portfolio guarantee scheme funded by the EU and managed by the EIF, so European Investment Fund, which is a part of the EIB group. But although it's non-thematic, there was a significant contribution and a major portion of the portfolio was directed to green investments. So guarantee agreements with 18 financial institutions in the region, throughout the region, unlocking a total of 885 million was available in loans with favorable lending conditions, which are expected to support 15,000 companies and secure 140,000 jobs in Western Balkans. And another guarantee product that I would like to mention is the EFSD Plus risk sharing facility for renewable energy. So again, EFSD Plus has also been mentioned. So it's European Fund for Sustainable Development. It's an EU guarantee scheme. Through the support from this guarantee scheme, EIB with resources from the European Commission, EIB will be offering a non-granular link risk sharing with financial institutions in Western Balkans, covering up to 50% of the individual near risk exposures to projects in the targeted sectors. So we will be providing 50% up to 50% of guarantee to the near risk exposures of the banks, of the financial institutions. And the target here is renewable energy products, renewable energy projects, energy efficiency, and digital infrastructure. So through this, also we aim to provide increased lending, extra lending capacity for the financial institutions, so that they will also lend in more favorable terms to their clients. So this was a quick overview of the lending products, and I would like to also mention, also briefly go through our advisory programs and partnerships and the tools available for our clients. So the first program I would like to mention is the Greening Financial Systems Technical Assistance Program. It's a very complex technical assistance program. And it is a joint initiative by the German government, the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, then the IKI program, so International Climate Initiative, also funded by the German government. And recently, Luxembourg, the government of Luxembourg, also joined as a donor for this very important program. So the idea is to provide technical assistance at two levels. So it's a two-track program. So the idea is to provide technical assistance and customized support to both central banks and regulators and to financial institutions in the region. So central banks and regulators, so that they develop tools, policy instruments, and supervisory capacity necessary to manage climate risks in the financial system, as well as create conducive environment for the green investments, and to the financial institutions, so that they can build the necessary capacity to integrate climate risk management practices into their strategies and scale up green investments. So this is not a program specific to the Western Balkans. It's also it's implemented in sub-Saharan Africa and also in the MENA region, but also very active in Western Balkans. So we are currently working with 3 central banks in the region, namely the North Macedonia, Albania, and Bosnia-Herzegovina, plus 4 FIs in the region, while others are still to be onboarded in next year, 2026. So EU Green Agenda for Serbia, it's a project implemented with technical and it's again a technical assistance program, and it's implemented with the financial support of the European Union and in partnership with the UNDP. And also with the funding support provided by the government of Sweden, Switzerland, and Serbia. Another tool that is that I can mention as a success story is the decarbonization guide for North Macedonia. So it is a joint initiative of the EIB, EU again, and the Economic Chamber of North Macedonia. It is a website which has guidelines describing in a clear and easily trackable manner to decarbonize a company, including the calculation of the greenhouse gas emissions, inventory, carbon footprint calculator for North Macedonia, creation and implementation of action plans, and so on. Additionally, the site provides clear guidelines on how to assess and diminish the carbon footprint of a product, and also specifically for North Macedonia. Furthermore, training materials are provided and detailed information on related certifications are provided. And no need to mention that all of these are, of course, in line with the EU taxonomy requirements. So just to show you very briefly how it looks like. Yep, here is the page, and you can see, like, when you want to go, or if you want to decarbonize, like, your company, you have the tools, and decarbonize your product, you have the tools. You also have detailed information on financing of your transformation, green transformation, and the related certifications, stakeholders, and all. So it is a very useful tool, online tool, and in the EIB web page, on the North Macedonia page, dedicated page, you will see a number of several success stories from real case companies who use this tool, online tool, and in a successful manner, and they had an impact accordingly. So going back. Yes. So last but not least, I would like to mention about the Green Checker. So EIB Green Checker is one of the flagship projects of the EIB under its green offering. And we are very proud to announce that this green eligibility tool is now fully available for the Western Balkans region. So EIB Green Checker It's an online tool, as you can see, to help the financial institutions and the promoters, project promoters, to quickly assess if a project qualifies as green, according to the EIB criteria and accordingly the EU taxonomy criteria, and making it easier to align with investments with sustainable finance goals. So it is a very user-friendly guided online tool where you can produce a report including a climate impact estimations like carbon dioxide reductions, energy savings, or other environmental benefits, which can be used for internal planning and reporting, and also in operations with the EIB. So you can also use it perfectly for submitting your financial institutions allocation proposals and to verify the eligibility. The tool also streamlines largely to the assessment process and combining a structured guidance with the EIB's expertise, and it is of course freely accessible and without any cost, and it is tailored for the region for each country. So this is the EIB Green Eligibility Checker. So I will also just very quickly show you how it looks like. So this is a dedicated page under the EIB website, and you click Start Assessment. So you see you can directly choose one financial institution for assessment. So any financial institution um, in the Western Balkans. I just choose Erste Bank Serbia for example. So you click continue, and let's say you choose, there are a number of areas, and you choose, let's say, harvester replacement, and you enter the data here. And you see the eligibility status is EIB Green, and when you click done, you have a downloadable report actually, and this is, I think, a very useful part of the tool. So you can download as PDF your green eligibility result, and yeah, so then you can use it for any purpose. So I think this is a very useful part of the tool. And finally, we have a very short introduction also. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening and your attention. And we are happy to respond if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Tolga. It was very interesting. We have one question in the chat, and it is, how can we find a contact from the European Investment Bank representatives for each of the mentioned countries? There already was one mentioned for North Macedonia.
Sorry, I couldn't quite get the question.
How can we find a contact from each of the European Investment Bank representatives for each of the mentioned countries?
Yes, sure. It is on the EIB website. So detailed information, contact information has been provided on the EIB website on each country. If you go to because we have dedicated pages for each country, and there you have the contact details of our representative office.
Great, thank you so much. Maybe we can also share the link in the group chat if you have it available. Yeah, I think if anyone else has any questions, please post them in the chat now. Now that you have the opportunity to ask our experts. All right. If there are no questions, thank you so much, Tolga. It was very interesting. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Sabine for the closing remarks. And she's also going to show you some additional resources and links for additional information.
Thank you, Nina. And thank you to all the speakers in the webinar. It's always very interesting to see what's going on the green finance aspects in the Western Balkan regions. Yeah, and as Nina mentioned, we have reached the end of our webinar on EU financing options for the private sector in the Western Balkans, with a focus on environmental projects. And yeah, I would like to thank you very much for staying with us. And I would like to just summarize quite briefly the main discussion points. And yeah, we have learned that the EU is a key donor in the region and provides elaborate support to the private sector, both in terms of financing, but as well as what we've seen today in terms of technical assistance. The WBIF has developed more than 20 financing programs for the private sector in the region. And we have heard also today that they can be accessed through partnering international financial institutions or partnering financial institutions, just like the European Investment Bank. And yeah, when you receive the slides, you will see just in a second that we have also provided you with an extensive list of links that are relevant for sourcing EU funds for the region, aiming at financing environment projects. And as said, the EU has great interests in increasing the utilization under its funding program. So we warmly invite you to really use the list of links and search through them to helping you also facilitating your steps towards applying for grants. And with that, I would like to say goodbye and also thanks again to all the speakers. And we wish you a good afternoon. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.